So for this video, I'm going to talk all about the 1976 Gibson Les Paul Deluxe, the one that I own in particular. I'm also going to talk about other deluxes from the 70s, the history behind them, the history about this guitar, how I got it, and talk about the mini humbuckers and all the great sounds and tones it offers. So let's check it out. So I got this guitar from an old friend that I used to hang out with. It would always just sit on his couch in his living room. Whenever I would go over, I would always kind of play it. Now at the time, I think it was 2014, it was obviously in bad shape. The neck was all out of whack. It was very buzzy, almost unplayable to a point. It wouldn't stay in tune. The electronics were falling out of the back because it didn't have the back plate at the time. So it clearly needed some work. But eventually, after being at his house all the time, I offered to buy it from him, and after a few negotiations, he accepted, and it was mine. Now, initially, I had no idea what year it was from, neither did he. I assumed it was from the 90s at least, because it had some wear on it, especially on the neck. Like, it was obviously put through its paces and played a lot, so I assumed it was at least 10 to 15 years old. So I took it over to my local music store, George's Music in Springfield. They did all the research on it and told me it was from 1976. Now this absolutely, it blew me away. I was shocked. It was one of those things where you kind of dream about a vintage guitar falling into your life or into your lap, or you walk into a Salvation Army and there's a 59 Les Paul just sitting there for $100. It was kind of like that sort of moment. It was an amazing feeling, I'm not gonna lie, but I was super grateful for it to happen. I remember I called my buddy immediately to tell him that it was from the 70s. I felt obligated to tell him. But how much I gave him and how much money I needed to put into it to get it in working condition, you know, it was just going to sit at his house anyway, and he knew that, so it all ended up working out in the end. Now, when I finally got it home, I was so eager to play it. I plugged it right into my amp, and I struck an A chord, and I was actually, believe it or not, a little underwhelmed. Granted, the wiring needed some work, the neck needed a lot of work, the strings were super old and rusty, and I was also playing out of this really crappy amp as well, but I was expecting this huge Les Paul sound at least. It would end up taking me a few months to get it up and running to its fullest potential, but even then I was still sort of confused about the sound. I really didn't know much about guitars at this point. I didn't understand pickups and the wiring and how different guitars sound. I didn't get any of that stuff at the time. But luckily, as I learned more about this guitar and guitars in general, my love and interest grew for it and its unique sound and tone. So the Deluxe came out in the late 60s and was considered the new standard until the actual standards came back in the mid 70s. The Deluxes had a 4-ply maple and mahogany body, a 3-piece neck, and mini humbuckers instead of PAFs. Now I was expecting the PAF sound when I plugged it in, since I really didn't know anything about pickups at the time, and I just assumed that it would sound like a regular Les Paul. But since then, I've really come to appreciate and love the mini humbuckers. Now real quick, this is my other Les Paul. It's a 2011 60s reissue, and it's a great sounding guitar. I was used to hearing this type of Les Paul tone that has a lot of drive and, balls to it. It's what I thought all Les Pauls sounded like until I got the Deluxe. Now I obviously noticed the smaller pickups, but at the time, I didn't really know too much about them and what type of sound they would produce. So when I finally started learning more about this guitar and getting used to it and its sound, I absolutely fell in love with it. So I'm going to demonstrate the differences in sound between the Les Paul Deluxe and the 60s reissue. I think these pickups meet perfectly in the middle between a Les Paul standard with humbuckers and a cleaner style guitar like a Strat or Tele. They still have that ballsy tone, but just a little dialed back, so it's perfect for that heavy crunch and clean tones. Now there have been tons of bands and guitarists who used the Deluxe, but most notably Pete Townsend from The Who, Scott Gorham from Thin Lizzy, and even Neil Young used a Deluxe from this era. I really don't see too many people buying or even using Les Paul Deluxes these days, but I have met a lot of other guitarists through the internet that own vintage Les Paul Deluxes like this one. They all say the same thing. It's one of the best and unique guitar sounds that they've ever owned and played. The sound is incredible, very versatile, and is perfect for all styles of music. Now, if you're familiar with my YouTube channel, you know that I use this guitar a lot in my videos, and that's because it's one of my favorite guitars and it sounds incredible. I use it all the time to write and record my own music, as well as writing and playing with the Dead Pockets. You can actually go check out our YouTube channel. I'll link that down in the description. I especially use it when I play live because as much as vintage guitars are important to the history of music and guitar in general, I think they're better played and used instead of just sitting collecting dust in some showcase or whatever. Now, I do think there are some exceptions to that. I think some should be stored away and shown, but for the most part, I think these guitars should be played out live and used in a recording studio because that's what they were meant to do. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and some history behind the Les Paul Deluxe. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about the mini humbuckers as well as this guitar in general. I'm really curious what you guys think about it and its sound. I think in time I'm going to try and get my hands on a modern day Les Paul Deluxe and compare it to my 76 to really see if there's any big differences in sound. And I think that would be pretty cool. I'm going to leave you guys with some more playing and tone examples. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. And as always, keep on playing.
Thank you.